So I'm going to go ahead and start. Hi, I'm Ron Jackson. I'm the OEVA president and the web administrator. And my talk is about making your long-distance EV travel completely stress-free. Now, a few caveats. My wife and I, my wife Carla, we own a 2018 Tesla Model 3 and a 2023 Tesla Model Y. So this is very Tesla specific. We have a talk at 2:30 from Danny Brasic, who has a VW ID4. So if you have a non-Tesla vehicle and you want the story on that, he's your man. So he did a really great trip to Minnesota. There's an article on our website about it, but hear it from him. It's going to be interesting. So let me talk. I got my private pilot license back in 1988. And learning to fly, I got a lot of wisdom from my instructor, and that's carried over into my EV driving. Not everything carried over into my EV driving. There are a few hints that don't really apply to EV, but although I'm thinking there will be EV airplanes at some point, I'll get an EV airplane, and propellers will be important then. But what really matters is that you don't run out of fuel. And in an EV, you don't want to run out of energy. And there's a lot of FUD about, well, maybe I should get a plug-in hybrid because I can get gas anywhere, and who knows if there's going to be EV charging. I can tell you for Teslas, this is not a problem. This is a trip that I did from, Carla and I were visiting relatives up in Sechelt, BC, came down to Portland. I circled all of the Tesla superchargers along that route. There's a lot of them. We stopped twice. The actual road trip time was about 8 hours, the drive time. This is a better route planner, and it estimated about 8 hours. It actually took 11, but that didn't, there's a difference between the driving time and getting across the US border and waiting for the ferry to get to the mainland. So by the time you've included all of that, it was 11 hours door to door. We stopped to charge twice. In actual point of fact, we charged not for 26 minutes. I think we charged for 23 minutes there and 22 minutes down here. So, but in fact, we stopped many times more than that in an 11-hour drive. We like to switch drivers every hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. Otherwise, the passenger gets bored and the driver gets tired of driving. And so we're stopping at rest areas and other things. At these two stops, I mean, by the time we've stopped, plugged in the car, which takes no time at all, and then, you clean the windshield, you walk the dog, you go find a restroom, you come back and eat a cookie, switch drivers, it takes about 20 minutes. So really it adds no time to your trip. And you have lots and lots of alternatives. The Tesla also keeps track of it knows you're going to a supercharger. When you tell it you're going to a supercharger, it preheats or pre-cools the battery for rapid charging, so charging is very fast. It also knows what other drivers are coming to the supercharger, so you know that there'll be a space available for you when you get there. This is a trip we did to Texas, Austin, Texas, this year for the eclipse. A few years ago, I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of buddies of mine from college, and I said, hey, there's an eclipse. It's going to go through Austin. A couple of you guys live in Austin. Why don't we all just meet at your place? And so Carla and I planned a trip there. And I always do now all of my planning just in the Tesla, because the navigation has gotten so good. I just tell it, we're going to Austin. We want to stop at Burleson, Texas to see a friend of hers. We want to stop at Denver to see a friend of hers. And we want to go to Moab, Utah to Arches National Park. And it just plans all that in for us. Now, we didn't necessarily stop at these particular chargers because, as you saw, there's a lot of chargers along the route. This is just sort of for strategic planning. For our tactical planning on a daily basis, we just do that in the car as we're driving. We don't have to plan ahead, really. So this is how the trip starts. I pack my stuff in the front, pack Carla's stuff in the well. Our golden retriever, Leela, has the whole back of the car to herself. And then the only other thing we've got in the car We toss the snacks and well, that goes in the back seat. We like to have a lot of snacks. We've got a refrigerator, which is electric, and all of that with us. And then we hit the road bright and early, before noon is our goal. And you can see here that we've got 37% when we get to Boardman. That's plenty. I usually like to plan 20% reserve. If you follow what the Tesla suggests with its automatic routing stuff, I think it's about 15%. But that's that thing about never running out of charge, is to, I always consider 20% a minimum, because if you hit some adverse conditions, they can increase your amount of energy required. And rain is one of those factors. We did see a lot of rain in the gorge, but it didn't make that much difference. It wasn't that bad of rain. But when you get a lot of rain, it's like if you've ever driven on the freeway and you hit a puddle and you just feel how your car slows down. That's all energy that's going to have to be, that's going to reduce your range. It's got to come out of your battery. So anyway, we get to the museum at, well, this is the Spud Museum in the background. They're very proud of their potatoes out there. And so we stayed for, I don't know, 20 minutes or something to charge here. The Tesla superchargers were really busy, but these are 250 kilowatt superchargers. So they charge really fast. There were also 3 non-Tesla chargers there, DC fast chargers. Of those 3 pedestals, each one has 2 plugs, usually a CHAdeMO and a CCS. I can use a CCS using this adapter in my Tesla, so I could charge there if I wanted to. But I wouldn't really want to because, well, one of them was completely broken. The other one here apparently worked, but was slightly damaged. But it's only a 50 kilowatt charger, whereas the Tesla supercharger was a 250 kilowatt. And it's got CHAdeMO, so God, if you have a CHAdeMO car, you're kind of out of luck for a lot of, because they're going away at this point. But the price on this charger was, I think, 50 cents a kilowatt hour. And the Tesla was 30 for theirs. And the speed, the difference, I shot this photo off the screen at a different charging stop, but a 253 kilowatt charge rate is over 1,000 miles an hour charge speed. So you're adding 100 miles in 6 minutes. So and they keep them in good repair. Someone cut the cables over here at Electric Island on half the chargers. And I was talking with one of the guys here, and they have to order, they have to order the replacements, and they have to go out to bids to get the work done. And it'll take them a couple months to get those cables replaced. And then with Tesla, they're their own chargers, they have their own parts and their own service people. And if somebody cuts a cable, if it's a vital supercharger, that's going to get fixed right away. Anyway, a couple days later, we're at Moab, and it's an absolutely spectacular place. There's a lot of trails you can go along, and so we did that, but we had our golden retriever in the car, and the nice thing about the Tesla is it's got dog mode. And in dog mode, it puts up this little display so that you can see it from outside the car, that the air conditioning is on, that the dog is fine. And then so you can see it a little better. The animated balloon dog there, it actually jumps around, so it kind of draws your attention. And so you don't want some good Samaritan to break the window to rescue your dog from a hot car when it's fine in air conditioning. And they also have cameras in the car and cameras around the car for the Sentry Mode system. And we'd be sitting in a restaurant, and it's like, I wonder how Leela's doing. I hope she's okay. And you can bring, no, this was in our Model 3. This photo was taken. In the Model Y, she's in the back. But yeah, it's nice to be able to see that your pet is doing fine, see that the temperature is fine. You can look at the cameras around the car and see if anyone's messing with your car. It's just a great system. Anyway, we went to Moab. After Moab, we took the scenic route to Denver, which was a lovely trip. And then after Denver, we headed through Colorado to Texas. So it's very spectacular scenery. I mean, I spend so much time in my life working on my computer, and the screen is like this close, you know, for hours on end. And then we get on a road trip and we have scenery that just goes on for miles. And I mean, that's what I really love about doing a road trip. And because I know where I'm going to get charging and that I've got energy to get there and I don't have to worry about anything, it's just a real great stress relief for me. Now, this is a 2-lane country road in Texas. They call them farm-to-market roads. You find these in Oregon too. What's the speed limit on a country road like this in Oregon? Anyone know?
55.
Yeah, that's what I would guess. Yeah, that's what would seem right for this kind of road. In fact, this is Texas, and the speed limit varied between like 70 and 80 on these roads. The car thought that the speed limit would be 55. So now Teslas are smart, and they've got all these cameras, and they can read these signs, and they're in communication. But they haven't gotten it so it sends the speed limit data from the cars to update the database. Absolutely something they can do. I'm absolutely sure it's on their list. They have a very long list. They haven't done it yet. I mean, we've gotten hundreds and hundreds of updates to our car. We got our car in 2018, our Model 3, and it couldn't do a vast number of these things. But now my Model 3 and our Model Y can all do the same things because the software keeps getting updated and it adds all these new features.
Texas is so far in the past.
Yeah.
Portland, when I was growing up driving, the highway speed in Portland was 75. But we've had all those improvements in our, and Texas just
When we went to
hasn't
Wyoming, it was like 80.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different world getting out there. But anyway, it does affect your range because it was 11.4% more than the trip projection. So it projects your trip based on what it knows about the road speeds. And if you go faster, the force that the car feels goes up with the square of velocity. So if you're going at 55 miles an hour, your force is, you know, like 30%, versus going at 80 miles an hour, your force is like 65%. So your speed went up by like 25%, a little more, but your wind force more than doubled. So that's what's really affecting your range, is you've got all this wind drag on your car that's hitting you a lot harder. When I was driving back from an OEVA meeting this week, I snapped this picture of the energy graph, and it shows you that we're matching very closely. You know, the yellow is where it's consuming a little more than predicted, the green is a little less. But you know, when I got home, it was within 0.1% of its prediction. So if you're driving and it's got the right data, it will be very accurate. So my advice to you is, if you're driving normal conditions, but you could have rain, you could have things happen, 20% reserve is, I have no worries. When I'm going on an unfamiliar road, it could be the wrong speed limits, things could be weird, I go 30%. That gives me, then if it's the 11% difference, it's, well, I'm still close to 20. I've got a lot of options. So the other thing I want to talk about is autopilots. This is the autopilot that we had in our airplane. It would keep the airplane upright and sort of pointed in the right direction, but that was all. I remember when Tesla's autopilot software came out, people were saying, oh, they're misrepresenting it because an autopilot should make your vehicle autonomous like an airplane is when it's on autopilot. Well, airplanes are not autonomous. You still monitor the system. I mean, our airplane would happily fly through a flock of birds. It would happily fly, well, the plane wouldn't. The autopilot, as far as it's concerned, it would be happy to fly through another airplane, through a mountain. It doesn't know about any of that. It just vaguely wants to keep it upright and vaguely pointed in the right direction. Exactly, exactly. You put your car in cruise control, you're not going to go in the back and make a sandwich or something or take a nap. Anyway, but Tesla also has a thing called what are they calling it now? Supervised full self-driving, that the car can drive itself. And actually, it doesn't work if you're pulling a trailer. They haven't built that part of it yet. I'm hoping they will do that eventually after they get the regular part perfected. But full self-driving supervised reduces your chance of an accident. Statistics based on the data that Tesla has released about this. It increases your safety about 10x. You're 10 times less likely to get in an accident running full self-driving. And you're supervising it, so if it makes a mistake, you can take over, and occasionally it'll screw up on things. But a lot of the time it screws up on things that are really minor. Like I was leading Fred Meyer, and it was supposed to turn right on Canyon, and instead it turned right in the parking lot, and it kind of wandered off through the parking lot. But eventually it figured its way out. I was not in a hurry, so I just let it, I'm curious to see how it does. But the nice thing is that you're increasing safety, and it's relaxing you, so you can pay more attention to what's going on around you. Situational awareness is what they call it in the pilot biz. Anyway, this is an intersection. My wife was driving. This green arrow is where the car was. We pulled off the freeway, came up to this thing, and she was a little confused by this intersection, which I can understand. Let me zoom in on that a little better. There were cars coming toward us and cars coming from the left and turning. It was terribly confusing. Let me show you what the traffic pattern was here. This is the intersection. The blue line is a thing that had all the traffic lights for this whole mess on it. And we were looking at that, and she said, "Ron, what do I do?" And I said, "Well, put it in FSD." So she flicked the little turn stalk, and the car drove us perfectly from there to the hotel. And at that point, she realized, I should be using this FSD more. This is going to save me effort. And that's a big benefit when you're traveling in familiar locations. If you fall asleep when you're driving a car that doesn't have the lane keep and that kind of stuff, you'll die. If you have the FSD, it will beep at you. I'd much rather have something beep at me than die. So anyway, I use FSD all the time. It's a great stress reliever. Anyway, we get to Burleson, Texas. Carla met with her friend. They were kids together. They hadn't seen each other for over 40 years, and I won't tell you precisely how many over 40 years, but it had been a very long time. It was a great visit, and then we got to Austin. And this is a boat ride we got together with all my buddies, went on a boat ride. Under the bridge, they have these little gaps where bats hibernate in, and then at dusk, they take off and they fly out from under this bridge. It's quite the local thing. So we went to that. We went to the state capitol. That's the Capitol Dome. There were caves in the little town outside of Austin that we were staying at was Georgetown. And the way they discovered these caves is they were putting in pilings for a freeway, and they got the pile down so far, and then it just fell into the ground. And it's like, well, that's unusual. And so they went and looked under there, and there was this huge cave system. So they have tours of it. It was really nice. But the question is, did you get to go to see the eclipse? And if you know anything about that eclipse in Texas, there were forecast clouds at the time. After driving thousands of miles to see this eclipse, well, we were getting together with our buddies, and we actually went out on a boat on a lake, so it was lovely. And we parked in a cove to see if we could see the eclipse. But the clouds were swarming over, and we were getting closer to totality, and it was getting even more clouds, and so it looked like it was going to be a bust. But as it turns out, the clouds parted right during the eclipse. We could see with the naked eye. You could see right about here at the 6 o'clock position, and then up around the 10 o'clock position. There are little hints there, but to the naked eye, you could actually see the solar prominences as plasma was shot off the sun and curling around, and you could see planets. And we were in this cove of a LBJ lake, and you could hear the animals as they were, reacting to the darkness. And
You're telling us it was a perfect trip.
it was not bad, not bad. It was not bad. So, what have we learned? Well, you can see that this navigation software takes care of all the work. You don't have to do planning. You don't have to do guidebooks. I mean, it'll even tell you, okay, I want to go to this supercharger, and it'll tell you the restaurants around the supercharger. If you give it a destination, it'll tell you when it's open. It'll connect to your phone, and you can call them, and you can, it's very convenient. The superchargers are the best system out there, and they've opened it up to other vehicles. If your car is compatible, if your manufacturer supports it, highly recommended. They're not all open to other cars. There are limitations. The supercharger at Boardman actually had a magic dock. That's a thing where it'll either release just the Tesla connector, or it'll release the Tesla connector with an adapter to CCS on it. So if you have a CCS car, and if the car is compatible with that, you should be able to charge off the Tesla system. You have to set up with Tesla for payment. But generally, plan a 20% reserve. That works almost always. 30% is more prudent under difficult conditions, but most of the time that's not the case. We did have occasions when we were driving to northern Minnesota back in 2019 in the Model 3, where there would be in the Midwest, they have absolute downpours of rain. And you're going 80 miles an hour on a freeway, and the rain comes and the traffic slows to 79 miles an hour. And so you're plowing through it, so you're gonna burn a lot of energy pushing that water out of the way. So it's good, although on major routes now, there are enough superchargers that usually you have multiple superchargers. So you may plan to stop at this one, but you have a contingency supercharger that's a bit closer that you could definitely reach. I absolutely recommend dog mode. It's great traveling with our Golden Retriever. And Sentry mode, I always have Sentry mode, except when my car is in the garage at home. So if someone messes with it. A brief thing on Sentry mode, we have that on our Model 3, and my wife had parked it at Trader Joe's in Beaverton. And someone pulled up in a white Toyota something or other, opened the door, wham, into our car, and leaves a big dent, a big crease in the door. Fortunately, I found it the day afterward, and I said, anyway. So I looked at the recording on Sentry mode, and it'll put it, if you have a thumb drive in your car, it'll put that on the thumb drive. And I found the clip where I could watch the vehicle pull up. In Oregon, we have plates on the front, so I had the plate number, the color, the time, the location, called up Beaverton Police, and they said, okay, did you want to press charges? And it's like, well, if they'll pay for the insurance, then, if they'll cover the insurance, then no, it's fine. And they called them out. They were happy to just provide the insurance. They couldn't leave a note because it was raining. Otherwise, they certainly would have left a note, or so they said. But anyway, highly recommend Sentry mode. And the car did not come with Sentry mode back in 2018 when we bought the car. I mean, this car has been adding all of these new features because it's all through. Teslas are very software centric. It's not that you need a little box that does this one little function. It's just all done through the cameras and the AI and the software. Although they did upgrade the FSD computer because we had bought FSD. It originally had the earlier computer, and they updated it to the FSD3 Tesla hardware. And our Model Y now has FSD hardware 4, which is their latest version. And there will be a 5 and a 6 and so on in future years. But anyway, it's a great system. Even if you don't have FSD, all Teslas come with lane keep and a traffic-aware cruise control. A lot of cars have that now. That's a pretty basic system, but it does reduce your energy outlay, your amount of attention you have to pay. The thing that FSD gives you is, it takes all of the interchanges. It'll drive you off to where the supercharger is, or the restaurant, or whatever you've selected. So it really relaxes you from the stress of doing a trip. So it makes a long trip just a joy. You're watching the scenery. You can enjoy the scenery. You can enjoy when we were driving on our trip to Minnesota, we were driving through the Badlands. This was back in 2019, so it was a much more primitive software system, but it did really well at that time, just driving through the park at 20 miles an hour, all the twisty little roads, you could look at the scenery, and you weren't, glued on the road, staying in your lane, so you didn't see what was around you. So anyway, it's my favorite way to travel. And that's it. Thank you.